Hello everyone, it's your favorite West Virginia on Space here, and it's kind of funny that for storytelling, there's often a lot of complexity that goes into the morality of some characters. But it's not a universal thing, but it is quite interesting. Like, how you have, for every Superman or Captain America, there's the characters in The Boys. For every pure evil villain like Thanos, there's a sympathetic one like Magneto. There's a lot of complexity, especially about what is or isn't right or wrong to do in any particular situation. How far should one go in the name of doing the right thing, and how far can one do evil but have a justifiable reason for doing it. These are complex moral questions that don't often have easy answers, that even I don't pretend to give. However, though rarely these questions have universal, always applicable answers, there's often kind of bad ones that are definitely not good and don't work if you think about them too long. Case in point, Lily Orchard, and in particular for this discussion, her video on the thought experiment on heroism and interaction, which you must see her video in order to understand this one, so if you haven't seen it, go and watch that, all that jazz. But in this video, I want to explain why the morality presented in this video isn't actually good and would actually be the attitude of a villain, or at least a very bad one, especially her OC in this case, who, in presented in the video, is kind of just straight up evil. Like, despite being presented as a hero, if you actually look at her actions objectively, are the attitude of a villain, just no question. But we will have to get to that point, so let's get into it. Now, for this part, I'm mostly drawing from her beginning and end of the video, so once again, see the previous video for this all to make sense. Now, granted, I do actually agree with some points, mostly that her case that the category of anti-hero and anti-villain don't really make sense. They're kind of a weird terminology to begin with. Now, I think it's one of those things where it's like, we kind of have an idea of what we associate with as like a series of tropes, but she is kind of right that putting the pretext anti to something doesn't really make sense. I don't always agree, however, that a anti-hero or anti-villain is necessarily the embodiment of the trope designated hero and designated villain, or a more honest reflection of it, as there are just some complications with that are only sometimes true and sometimes not. It's a complicated thing I don't fully agree with. But honestly, though, one of the biggest points of the whole video is that media is saying that you should never kill someone, that killing bad people makes you as bad. And I, once again, do have to agree with that to a point, as sometimes the hero or a person has to objectively kill a bad guy in order to do the right thing. After all, most of us agree, say, the soldiers fighting the Nazis in World War II were obviously not villains for killing them. They did what they had to do to save the day and help the people back home and, of course, stop tyranny. Obviously, that's true. However, I also don't think it's quite as pervasive, this idea that you can never kill a bad guy, as Lily seems to think it is. I mean, granted, it's very common in children's cartoons and superhero stories occasionally, although the superheroes one is more complex because a lot of heroes will kill if they have to. It's more of a stereotype that they don't kill than it is. I mean, there's only like a few heroes that really have that rule as anything close to a rule to them, but that's a whole different matter right there. But I also don't think Lily really understands why characters or people in real life are uncomfortable with killing, or when they don't want to do it. Generally speaking, no one should want to kill. It's only when you have to. It's not when you should want to. It's that sometimes you have to do what's right. However, I think a perfect example is her understanding of the trolley problem. The main interpretation of the trolley problem, and I won't bother explaining that, I won't bother explaining what the trolley problem is, but we all know what it is. But what we see here with the trolley problem is the idea is that, is it better to objectively save lives, but you'll be personally responsible for an innocent person's death? That is a very complicated thing, because, once again, there's many different answers to that, and it's just a hard thing, and there's variations on to add more complexity. But Lily seems to immediately think it's about someone's ego. Someone just saying, oh, I could never kill someone, but it's a question. Is it better to let something happen or save lives, but at the cost of personally killing an innocent person? It's a little more complex than, like, for example, if the one person strapped on the other track was the guy who set all this up, an evil bad guy, then yeah, it would be an easy question. But that's not the person on the other track. It's an innocent person who's done nothing just as much as the 5 people. Is once again a question of, are you personally willing to kill innocent people to try to save more lives? That is a much more complicated question that people have much more complicated answers to. Also, once again, we kind of get to the point where Lily doesn't seem to really understand, like, morality or how people think somewhat. Once again, comparing, like, all conservatives or right-wingers to literal Nazis, which that's just not right. Like, at all. Like, listen, I have no particular love for the right or any particular love for the left. I hate both of them, really. But, like, if I say anyone on the left is, like, some kind of Satan-worshipping baby eater, that's not right. It's not true. It's not an objective statement. And once again, comparing it is a false comparison that it really helps nobody. But ultimately, I think now we can finally get to her OC and why she is actually just unhinged and kind of evil if you really think about it. Also, this isn't technically a point that Dark Ambrose is evil or anything, but I do find it kind of funny that Lily Orchard thinks that the opposite of an objectable character is a woke socialist Sith Lord. I just find that kind of funny. Of course, if you see the video, I'm talking about the part where Dark Ambrose kills those two random rich trillionaires or whatever, and in the whole stint. Now, of course, once again, this comes the question, well, how is this evil? Now, of course, killing bad people isn't necessarily evil, but it actually comes down to what was Dark Ambrose's justification for killing them. Because remember, she's not omnipotent. She doesn't know everything the author or the writers or the audience does. She only knows what her character does. So if we actually look at the situation, she was walking along, minding her own business, and sees two people talking and decides to kill them. Because as far as I can count, there's only 3 potential justifications for why she killed them, or more accurately, reasons for why she did it. One is simply that they're rich, which sounds like a pretty messed up reason when you actually think about it, because, I mean, if she did that, if the reason why she killed them was because they're rich, then A, she's just killing people because they have money, which is, messed up on its own. B, it has nothing to do with actually anything they were doing in particular. And C, Dark Ambrose is kind of loaded, if you actually think about it, because on that little expert on Star Wars economy, I know for a straight fact that lightsabers and spaceships are very expensive, and only generally people who are relatively wealthy have them, especially lightsabers. And she has a lightsaber and I believe a spaceship, but the lightsaber alone would make a ton of money. So it's very probable that Dark Ambrose herself is rich. So she's just at least a person who's quite well off, killing other people who are well off because they're well off. That isn't hypocritical at all. The other potential reason, of course, being that, they were joking about child enslavement and all that jazz. Now, granted, that's pretty messed up, and it does sound like it's a better reason, but once again, they were just making bad jokes. Now, I don't know about you, but we all say some pretty messed up jokes. You know what I mean? This whole category of jokes that are going to get us sent to hell and all that jazz. It's something that people do for fun, and it's just, dark, schadenfreude humor, that kind of thing. But, Dark Ambrose doesn't actually have any reason to believe they actually were doing that. All she heard was that they were joking, making dumb jokes. So what? Now, according to Dark Ambrose, you kill people because they make bad jokes? They say things you don't like, so now they must die? Isn't that not the attitude of an authoritarian dictator who just kills people because they say things they don't like? Because, once again, she has no reason to believe they were actually doing anything there. All she knows is that they were joking, making bad jokes, and so she killed them for it. So, once again, not really the attitude of a hero. Now, the third reason, and this one only really exists in Star Wars or because the character has powers, is that she could have used mind reading to sense that they actually did this thing. Now, granted, this actually would fulfill some of the morality, aka she knows they were doing a bad thing and so killed them for it. That's not necessarily perfect, but once again, it's internally consistent with, say, a chaotic good kind of character. However, it becomes the fact of why she read their mind like that. Because once again, she's committed a massive violation of, personal boundaries and, that. Most people agree that stuff like mind control is, equivalent to rape in a lot of ways. So, I don't know what mind reading is or searching through someone's memories would count as crime-wise, but it would be counted as pretty bad, and most people agree it's a pretty evil thing to do. In fact, breaking into people's private stuff because you have a hunch that they were doing something bad, violating things for no good reason, isn't that exactly what corrupt officers do? They think, you must be a criminal, so they break into your house or beat you down so they can get information out of you or whatever they want to do. Isn't that exactly what corrupt authority figures do? So once again, we have a hero, quote unquote, who's acting like a corrupt authority figure in a fascist government, or just a corrupt authority figure in general. Our hero, everyone. The thing on top of all this is that, once again, there was no expedient reason you had to kill them right here. It wasn't like they were actively doing a crime in this exact moment, or if they were going to unleash some plan that had to be stopped right this second, or you believed they were. So, once again, there was no immediate reason to go off of suspicion. She had really no reason to believe they were actually doing anything evil, and yet still went straight to murder. And even if she was right this time, that they were evil, corrupt officials, and they would continue to do bad things, that how many people would she kill just in this fashion? How many people would die because they were too wealthy in her eyes, or they said jokes she didn't like, or say things she didn't like? Or how many people is she going to violate their personal privacy because, she thinks you're evil? Nothing of this really gives off the impression of an actual hero, does it? In fact, it does sound like something a corrupt, evil Sith Lord would do. Funny how that works. But once again, what makes her evil here isn't that she's killing people or bad people. It's that the justification is terrible. There's no good reason really to be doing it in this circumstance. So it's not because you're killing people. It's because she's killing people who she has no logical reason to believe are actually worth being killed. Now, I do in this video want to actually give an example of what a character who is more willing to kill but isn't insane about it and actually has a reason for doing it that I think is better. And because Lily used an OC, I'll use an OC of my own. Specifically in this case, Blood, or the guy you see on the YouTube thumbnail / YouTube self-animated. It's a confusing thing, you know how we YouTube animators do it. But specifically, he does a lot of stuff out in space, as you can see from the backgrounds and all this jazz. But a whole other layer to that is that he somewhat has to fight extraterrestrial aliens occasionally. And granted, they aren't like usually earth-shattering threats. They're mostly just like abduction aliens, that kind of thing, or doing weird experiments. And so he often gets involved in them. Fighting these guys, he of course has no problem killing them. You're abducting poor innocent people from their home, you're gonna get shot. Or at least if you can do it to save the innocent people. But notice there's a very particular reason for doing that. Trying to help people, trying to save people who have been captured. He's not killing them just because they're aliens, or just because they said bad things, because they're actively doing something evil and trying to stop them from doing it. And once again, like in this universe, a lot of extraterrestrials don't think very highly of humans. They actually hate them in a lot of cases, or at least look down on them incredibly. And so they often make mean jokes, but when Blood sees that, he doesn't just go out and straight murder them because they dared to say something he didn't like, because once again, that would be evil. They didn't actually do anything. They didn't, especially not deserving death. And that's the thing at the end, there's a difference there. A slight difference, well actually a quite important one. But it comes down to, once again, a partial motive. Killing people sometimes is, once again, necessary, but for an actual reason rather than just, you part of a group or say thing I don't like, therefore you must die. Once again, I think that makes someone like Blood a much more actual hero who's actually doing good than someone like Dark Amberosa, who is just killing people for being things she doesn't like, fundamentally at the end of the day. Ultimately, though, that's just my opinion, of course. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below about whether I was right or wrong, who do you think is an actually more moral character, and such like that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time. Yeah? Hey, why don't you hit that sub button? You're gonna become a subscribble. Get to see my content quicker. Wouldn't that be nice? I bet so.